So when you think of your future, are you optimistic about it and hopeful? You're like, yeah, that's great. Or do you know, and I mean know, your future is going to be fantastic? A lot of people would say, well, you can't predict your future. You don't know, blah, blah, blah. Well, I would disagree. Of course, there's always unforeseen things. However, in shifting your mindset, no matter what you've been through, and trust me, if there's anybody who could throw a pity party for themselves, it would be me. And I refuse to, because that type of thinking is actually what gets us trapped and why we don't have hopeful futures if we keep reliving negativity over and over and over again. No matter how bad the circumstances are, if we can look back and take it as a learning experience, readjust ourselves and plan our future and shift our minds and our expectations, that can change so much. Okay, well, how do we do that, right? How do we shift our mind to more of an optimistic approach to our future where we're planning it, we're moving forward with it, but also can, be realistic where we let in, life, right? Because it's not meant to be perfect. And I think that's sometimes a lot of the problem in the first place, and why we have to shift our expectations is working within imperfection, and embracing that can be a very, very beautiful thing with a very positive perspective. Okay, so how do we do that? What are some tips on how to do that, and what would that mean? Well, starting by collecting positive evidence. Right? Positive evidence of things you've done. Every single person, I don't care, all of us, everybody watching has something in their past that they've done that they can be proud of and accomplished. Absolutely. Where it gets tricky is when you get into comparison. Well, these are the things that I've done. Well, it's not that great because whatever. Well, so-and-so did whatever. Well, forget so-and-so, okay? This is your life. You were born into this body. These are your circumstances. This is what it is, right? No matter what life's thrown at you. It's very easy to kind of get into that thing of comparison and everything else. Well, if I had all of these things or whatever. Well, no, like your life is your life. So we have to change the inside of this brain, right? Your brain set with your circumstances to change your future. And it all begins in the mind, because everything else is external. It comes and goes, right? Life is in waves. Appearance, the aging process, relationships, friendships, jobs, income, all like location on where you live, all of that can change. Those are external things. This is the most important thing. And that's why shifting this can change all of those other things. Always celebrate every opportunity. Celebrating opportunities can be scary, right? A lot of times we want to find an opportunity comes up and we want to find the reasons why not to do something, and that's a good way in our comfort zone. I learned, I've traditionally have been a person, I go, yeah, and I was a person who would just dive in and try a lot of things, which is opposite to a lot of people. I've learned I did take risks. I would do things. At times I was even reckless, and whereas a lot of people I find traditionally are more in the, generally stick to trying to find reasons why not to try something. And that can be a problem too, right? Like all the excuses, all the things, this wouldn't work because whatever. And that narrative is very dangerous. I actually had to learn to step back and say no more than I was saying yes. So you could fall in that category too, right? So it just depends. But learning to look at opportunity as something that is something to be celebrated, well, that's something for change, and you have choices on what you can do. So that's a very uplifting way to view it and go, wow, I can change anything that I want to. Doing the work to change it, well, that's a different thing. And that's where a lot of people want to make excuses. And because let's be realistic, well, then we have an excuse not to have to do the work, right? And then it was somebody else's fault that we failed, not ours. Ooh. Do what makes you feel good. Really, what makes you feel good? Like, how are you going to get in a better mood or mindset around something? It could be something so simple like go for a walk, take a bath, light some candles, change the atmosphere, do something you want to do. Take yourself out for dinner. In my work, in my tradition, like before I was in corporate world or whatever else, so it was a normal thing to go out, by myself to eat, or whatever, if I was traveling, go to a movie alone or do different things like that. For me, that's not a problem. Some people have a really hard time with that. I'm like, no, don't need other people in my own company. I enjoy my company. However, I'm a people person. So I traditionally was around a lot of people, but I realized I'm a very high introvert extrovert, and I didn't really realize that about myself. And a lot of people identify as either an extrovert or an introvert. Most people actually can fall into that middle category. You have to ask yourself that, just when. It's more of a question of when and why. So when you need to recharge and why. So when you know yourself more and you know what you like, then you make these, you get to do the things that you enjoy and kind of set your ambiance and surroundings so that you feel better. So what makes you feel good for you, right? Not anyone else. What makes you feel good? And start with the simple things that can make your day better. And then that's uplifting. And then you build on that to move you toward that future and those things that you're doing for yourself, right? The better future. If you have a little moments that are wins every day, well, that's a great life, right? Because your life is the present, the moment. Your future and your past are irrelevant to your life when you're in that, when we're in our moments. Because you can't actually truly predict the future, and your past is gone, right? Everything is in your head. Even your past is in your head, and how you tell stories to yourself of your past is what you believe is accurate. Sometimes those thoughts aren't even accurate. We talk about that. That's a whole other topic. Watch your self-talk. That relates to, right? Your idea, you could have had something that happened in the past, and the way you tell yourself that story, that's your narrative, might be really incorrect. It's your reality. Somebody that could have been in, maybe it's a scenario or a memory somebody else was in, has a very different idea and vision of what happened in that scenario. Well, that's their reality. That's why the perception and our self-talk is so important, because that's what shapes the vision, the moments, the things, the feelings. So if you take something that happened in your past and you have those thoughts and that self-talk around that scenario, if you were to, and you, then maybe you viewed it as a negative experience, but then you actually look back and go, wow, if I change a scenario and I learn from that, and then you can reshape it into a positive one that can actually be a learning thing that can actually reshape your future. And then it's something that isn't as an anxiety provoking thing, or something maybe you've been avoiding now and dealing with, could be something that is meant for healing. So it just depends on how you see that scenario and that self-talk, the narrative in your mind. That's why it's so important. Notice what you're letting in. Notice what you're letting in. I really realized there's a quote, after, in my lifetime, I've had, clinical depression, abuse, so many different things that I've overcome. So many things that I used to not, so many people would tell me I was strong, and I realized I never saw myself as strong. It took me really destroying myself and rebuilding myself to look back and go, wow, look at how far I've come. Look at what I've really been through, and look at what I've done, to understand that how do I say this? So many people around me were telling me who I was versus me knowing who I was, what I was letting into my thoughts and into my belief, because of their beliefs, because of their insecurities, because of their judgments. Those perceptions were getting into my head and was screwing me up. And that is so common for the general human population, that we let that happen. Society does it to us. We're born, it could be our families that do that, with good intention. They don't even realize they're doing it. Our friendships, all the people that surround us have an impact on our brain and how we even view ourselves. They're a mere reflection of us. What we choose to watch on television, what we choose to read, what we choose to put in our minds, all shapes our idea of who we are, because it's a reflection. You choose, right? Why does somebody choose to read one, a particular type of book, and another person chooses to read a different type of book, and another person chooses to, play a sport, another person chooses to pick up an instrument and play music, whatever it is, right? All of that really comes from our brains, right? On the simplest form, the simplest thing, our brains and our self-talk and our things. And that has been shaped by, the environment we've come into, and our lives, like our different things. So it's like almost we have to take responsibility and be aware of that and understand that, and then pay attention to it. Just be aware of it. That's the first step. Just be aware of it. That's the very first step. Pay attention to it. The key to strengthening optimism and ourselves is being aware of these things. And then once we're aware of it, then we can work on the things that we need to do to make those changes to shift into a more positive mindset and perspective. Because we really should, I hate using the word should, but excited about our futures and our lives because we are taking responsibility for that future and shaping it, no matter what traumatic past we might have had. No matter what. Taking responsibility and saying, I'm going to make changes and knowing my future is going to be better because of the actions I take today. So what are you doing today to take actions for a better future tomorrow? Let me know. Or is this something you're like, okay, I wouldn't even thought about this, and I'm like, whoa, this is a lot. That's okay too. Comment below, let me know.